good to see you. My name is Dave, and I'm one of the ministers here at Gold Hill, and it's my privilege this evening to share a little bit with you. Now, I don't know everyone in this room. I know some of you. I know a lot of you. I don't know all of you, and I don't know why you're here. I don't know what it is you're hoping to get out of this evening. I don't know what it is that someone told you when they convinced you to come along. None of those things are pieces of information that I have. But there's some things that I want to share. And if you're here this evening, and for you, you're not used to being in a church, and some of the songs that we've sung are unfamiliar, some of the things that you've heard people say might sound a bit strange, I don't want you to worry about that. I'm hoping that what I'm about to say should be hopefully reasonably clear, and you can agree with me, or you can disagree with me, and we can have a conversation about it either way. But I'd like to share with you about someone in the Bible who was seeking something, and they found it. It's a simple story, really, at its heart. Someone who was looking for something, and they found it. And before I read that story, I want to ask this question. What is it that drives you in your life? What is it? It might be one thing. More likely, it's a number of things. What is it that drives you in your life? What do you mean by that, Dave? What is it that gets you out of bed in the morning? What is it that you find yourself looking forward to? When you're walking down the road, or you're waiting for the kettle to boil, or there's just a bit of blank time in your life, what is it that your mind just goes to? Where do you daydream? What is it that drives you? What is it that captures your imagination? What is it you're pursuing in your life? I'll share with you a few things that I, either now or in the past in my life, have pursued. There are things like happiness. I quite like being happy, not going to lie. I know I work for a church, but I do quite like being happy. And that's something that I pursue in my life. I do things that make me happy. I spend time with friends. I go sailing. I have cats, which apparently does make you happy. And thank you. I pursue hobbies. I pursue friendships. Where's she gone? I can't see her now. Hiya. I pursued my wife. Hiya. And still try to. But one of the things in my life that I pursue is Jesus. In fact, he's the person that I want to pursue above all and over everything else. And I want to explain to you a little bit tonight why it is that we do that. Because the truth is, we all have something that motivates us. We all have things that drive us. We all have things that make us do things and make us get out of bed in the morning and that we're pursuing. The question isn't, is there anything in your life that you're pursuing? The question is, what is it? And is it something that is giving you fulfillment and satisfaction and that is leading you somewhere, or is it not? With that in mind, I want to look at a story, a very simple story in the Bible, about a man called Zacchaeus. And if you don't have a Bible with you, then that's absolutely fine. There are some at the back, and it'd be great for you to be able to follow along. The red Bibles that are being passed around, this story can be found on page 854. 854. So if you are following along, or if you have come and you don't have a Bible with you, then that is where we're looking. It's in Luke chapter 19. If you're looking at it on your phone or in a Bible that you brought along, you'll need to find that for yourself, and I'm sure someone near you will be able to help if you're not sure where Luke is, but it's near the beginning of the New Testament, the second half of the Bible. It's Luke chapter 19. So I've just realized that in my notes all the way down it says Luke chapter 10, so that's a mistake. But Luke chapter 19. And we're going to read it through in chunks and look at this story of a man called Zacchaeus and his encounter with Jesus and see what it might have to say to us. So we'll start off reading, and I'll stop and start a few times. It's talking about Jesus, and it says, he, that's Jesus, entered Jericho and was passing through it. That was a town in Israel. A man was there named Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector and was rich. I want to pause there for a moment. And I want to ask, so who is Zacchaeus then? Well, Dave, he's a chief tax collector and he was rich. Those are the things that we know about him. That's all that we've heard in the story so far. But if you were reading this in sequence with the whole of this book that we call Luke, then this would start to throw up a question in your mind. Because in Luke so far, Jesus has had a few encounters with sort of tax collectory type people, and he's had a few encounters with people who are rich. And the tax collectory type people, he's met tax collectors. He's met tax collectors at the time were not particularly good people. They were people who would skim a little bit off the top, pocket a little bit. They were helping the oppressors Rome to take from the Jewish people, and Zacchaeus himself was a Jewish person who was taking from his own to give to the Romans. So he wouldn't have been a particularly popular person. So he was lumped in with all of the sinners and the tax collectors and the prostitutes and the people who didn't do good things. Jesus has met a few of those people, and every single time he accepts them. Every single time he embraces them. Every single time he welcomes them and says, I want you to be part of my group. I don't mind what everyone else thinks of you. I want you to be part of my group. Then there's the rich people. And he doesn't have a problem with rich people, but it seems as though every single rich person that he comes across in the story up until this point has said to him, actually, I want my money more than I want you. And so we've had people who are sinners and who are bad, and Jesus has accepted them. And we've had people who are rich, and they've said, we don't want you, Jesus. And so now we come to Zacchaeus, who in the Venn diagram of those two things is found right in the middle. He is a tax collector. He was a sinner. He's someone who people wouldn't have liked. But he was also a wealthy man. So how is he going to approach Jesus? Let's carry on. In verse 3, he was trying to see who Jesus was, but on account of the crowd, he could not, because he was short in stature. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore tree to see him, because he was going to pass that way. I'll pause again there. We read, he was trying to see who Jesus was. That was his aim. That's his goal at the beginning of this story. He was trying to see who Jesus was. Jesus, the man who was going to be passing along this road, and he wanted to get a glimpse. He'd heard stories. He'd heard something about Jesus. And there was something that he wanted to see. He wanted to glimpse it. He wanted to capture it for himself. I don't know what that was. Maybe he'd heard stories about the miracles that Jesus was doing. Maybe he'd heard that Jesus' teaching was very powerful and exciting and life-giving. And so he wanted to hear a little bit of that for himself. But something had intrigued him. I said earlier, I don't know why it is that you're here this evening. I don't know whether it's because you're used to being here on a Sunday night and it's where you are every week and for some reason didn't want to be out in the nice sun this evening. I don't know whether it's because someone told you that it would be a good place to be. I don't know whether it's because you're curious about what it is that we get up to when we're here. But the best reason I think there could be to be here tonight is that you want to see who Jesus is. You want to see what he's like. Maybe you've heard things about Jesus. Maybe you don't know what you think about him. Maybe you're not sure he's even real in the first place. Well, as we read this story and as we hear how Jesus related to Zacchaeus, I want to ask you whether you're willing to ask that question, to look and see, who is Jesus? What's he like? The problem for Zacchaeus, though, was that the crowds were in the way. There was this crowd of people gathered around Jesus, and he couldn't get through. We read that he was short in stature, meaning he was a little guy. And he couldn't see over the crowds, and he couldn't see through the crowds, and he couldn't get there. So his solution was to climb up a tree, which would have made him look stupid, would have made him look silly. A grown man, grown to the height he was, but still he was a fully grown adult, and he was climbing up a tree. It's not something that adults do. It's sort of slightly, it's not a respectable thing to do. It's not the kind of thing you normally do. If you're trying to ingratiate yourself with a group of people who don't like you, you don't make a fool of yourself by climbing a tree so that you can see this celebrity as he goes past. Makes you look a little bit desperate, makes you look a little bit silly. But he didn't seem to care. Of course, there's maybe a little slight bit of irony going on in this passage as well, because the truth is, if he was a king who happened to be quite short and everyone loved him, people would be clearing out of the way to let him get to the front. If he was popular, it didn't matter how short he'd be. If he was esteemed, if he was in the in crowd, people wouldn't be saying, no, Zacchaeus, I'm not going to let you get through. Keep at the back, even though you can't see over our heads. They'd have said, Zacchaeus, come on through. They're not doing that. The crowd that are there to see Jesus, the crowd of people who are wanting to follow after Jesus, the crowd of people who've already found where Jesus is, who've already had a chance to see what he's like, are getting in the way. Maybe, sometimes for those of us who are Christians, there's a little message in there that needs to say, actually, sometimes we need to look and see who's at the back of the crowd, who's trying to peer in and see this God that we serve, and how are we getting in the way sometimes? But that's not the main point of the story, I don't think. Zacchaeus is willing to make a bit of a fool himself just for one glance of Jesus. He's willing to be a little bit unpopular just so he can see what Jesus is like. I wonder if we're willing to be like that. Let me carry on with the story. In verse 5, when Jesus came to the place, he looked up and said to him, Zacchaeus, hurry and come down, for I must stay at your house today. So he hurried down and was happy to welcome him. All who saw it began to grumble and said, he's gone to be the guest of one who is a sinner. Zacchaeus stood there and said to the Lord, look, half of my possessions, Lord, I'll give to the poor. And if I've defrauded anyone of anything, I'll pay back 4 times as much. Then Jesus said to him, today salvation has come to this house, because he too is a son of Abraham, a son of the people of God, Abraham, the first person of God in the Bible. Jesus is saying this person is in line with him. This person is a follower of God. This person is someone who is in God's family at the end of this story. Something big has happened. Something big has changed. See, Zacchaeus was seeking Jesus at the beginning of this story. He wanted to see what he looked like. What he found as he looked in the face of Jesus was someone looking back at him in the eye and saying to him, Zacchaeus, come down. I want to have a meal with you. I want to spend some time with you. I want to come to your house. I want to come to your life. Zacchaeus thought that he was the one seeking after Jesus, and he was, but Jesus was seeking after him first. Jesus, at the exact point when Zacchaeus is up there, sat in a tree, stops, looks up, and goes, Zacchaeus, come on down. I want to be with you. And I want to pause for a moment and point out how massive that is. Because this Jesus is not just a roving troubadour who goes around telling cool stories and healing people and doing nice things. As a Christian, I believe that this Jesus, who calls Zacchaeus down from a tree, is the maker and the king of the universe. I believe that he is the originator of everything. If you want to know what I mean by that, ask me to have a little coffee with you after the service. But I believe that Jesus is the king of everything. And yet he notices this man. It's nice when anyone notices you. It's nice when anyone gives you a smile. It's nice when anyone opens a door for you or offers to take a bag for you or to get you a coffee. That's nice. It's nice when anyone takes the time out of their day to notice you. But sometimes to us it means even more when it's someone who could get through their whole life perfectly well without ever knowing our name. Someone who doesn't need us. Someone who is bigger than us, who is mightier than us, who has more power than us. There could be no greater contrast than between the king of the whole universe and a man who's so short that he can't see over a crowd and has to climb a tree in order to see someone as he walks past. Someone who's not accepted by anyone, someone who's turned away by everyone, someone who's not part of the crowd, who's not even allowed into the crowd, and the king of the universe. This king of the universe who knows everything about him already, knows where he's going to be, knows his name, knows his whole life, knows his whole history. As a Christian, that's what I believe. I believe that God knows us better than we know ourselves, knows us inside out. And I'll be honest, sometimes that scares me a little bit. Because I know myself well enough to know that there are bits about me that I don't want anyone to know about. The fact that God knows the lot. The fact that God knows everything. What if someone walked into this room now who knew every single little secret in your life? How would you feel? And then they look you in the eye and they say, come on, I want to spend some time with you. Can I come round to your house for a meal? It's a pretty special moment that we're getting to witness through the words of this story. See, we don't know what drew Zacchaeus close to Jesus. It could have been the teaching, it could have been the miracles, it could have been wanting to be part of this new phenomenon that he'd heard about. But the thing that changed his life was that Jesus accepted him, that Jesus wanted him, that Jesus wanted to be with him and to spend time with him. And when I say it changed his life, I don't just mean he had a warm, fuzzy feeling. I meant it changed his life. He went and lived his life differently. He talks about these possessions, giving them away if he's defrauded anyone, giving them back 4 times the amount. He's taking this seriously. He's saying, yeah, okay, I want this. I want to be close to you, but I know that comes with something. I know that there's a lifestyle that comes out of that. What was motivating him before was presumably wealth and getting more stuff and becoming richer, growing in his position. What's motivating him now is being a bit more like Jesus, is being the kind of person that he wants him to be. I said before that sinful people were gravitating towards Jesus. People who knew their failures were coming towards Jesus. But those who wanted to keep their own status, their riches, their power, all of those sorts of things, weren't willing to give that up for Jesus. Zacchaeus is a man who is an example of a man who knows his need and is willing to give up what was driving him before just to pursue it, just to get a little bit closer. And so Jesus says these words, "Today salvation has come to this house." What does that mean? Salvation, that's a very churchy word, a very Christian word. Salvation. It means that God's rescue plan had come to Zacchaeus. That Jesus who came to his house. See, in verse 5, Jesus says, I must stay at your house. And then we read that salvation has come to this house. When Jesus enters somewhere, salvation enters too. Rescue from ourselves, rescue from our failures, rescue from the things that hold us back, rescue from all the things, all the disappointments we might have been to ourselves, to other people, rescued from all the negative things that people have said about us, rescued from everything that is bad, and given everything that is good. Because this Jesus wasn't just a guy who went around and taught nice things. He was someone who made the ultimate journey, who was willing to die, and when he died, he took on all those failures. He took on all of those secrets that you wish no one else would know about. And he died to take the price for them. And then he rose again, like we've been singing about this evening, to show that death doesn't have the final word, and our failures don't have the final word, that life is God's goal. This is the Jesus who Zacchaeus met. The final verse of this passage says this. This is Jesus talking. For the Son of Man, that's him talking about himself, came to seek out and to save the lost. I don't know about you, but from time to time in my life, I felt lost. There were times in my life when I was driven by the need to be popular. I was driven by the need to be wanted and accepted and to be liked and to be loved and to get praise and affirmation for everything I did. The truth is that having realized how much I've been accepted by Jesus, that matters to me far less now. I like you all. You seem like a nice bunch. It doesn't matter to me as much as it used to, whether you like me or not. I'd far rather know that I'm accepted by Jesus. I'd far rather know that I'm accepted by the King of the universe. That's where I'm at now. That's where I believe that all of us can be. And those things that maybe have driven us up until this point, but ultimately don't provide the satisfaction that lasts. Because popularity goes, success goes. You can't live and die on the last compliment you get. You can't live and die on how well the last thing you did went. There comes a time when that dries up. But the Jesus I follow, I don't believe does. He is seeking us just like he sought Zacchaeus. So if you've come this evening curious about this whole thing, curious about this Jesus, I don't think that I've said enough this evening to give you all the information you need. Maybe you don't need that information. Maybe you just need a heart that says, I believe that there might be something to this. If that's you, we want to journey with you. We want to chat with you more. We want to explore that a little bit with you. I'm sure there'd be questions. I'm sure there'd be things that you'd need to talk through. That's part of what this evening is for.